Our first story comes from a man, a father, who always saw himself as a grounded skeptic. He and his family moved into their dream home in the English countryside, a beautiful old house built in 1789 for a wealthy textile magnate. He believed in old pipes, settling foundations, and a child's overactive imagination. He believed in pretty much anything except ghosts. His testimony, recorded over a series of sleepless nights, tells a different story. We bought the house in the autumn. The realtor called it a property with character, which I knew was code for expensive to keep up. But my wife, Eleanor, fell in love with the high ceilings and the walled garden. My youngest, 7-year-old Lily, was just thrilled to have a staircase she could slide down. For the first few weeks, it was perfect. The noises were what you'd expect from a 200-year-old building. The groan of timber, the rattle of a window in the wind. The house is just settling, I'd tell Eleanor. I was the pragmatist, the one who explained away the bumps in the night. But then the whispers started. They weren't from the wind or the pipes. They were different, faint, like a radio playing in a distant room, too quiet to make out the words. And they were always followed by a door clicking shut somewhere in the house. I'd get up, walk the halls. All the doors would be closed, right where we'd left them. The first time, you brush it off. The fifth time, you start to feel like you're losing your grip. The real turning point was Lily. One night, tucking her in, I saw she was staring at the empty space in her open doorway. "She's at the door again, Daddy," she whispered, her eyes wide. I turned, saw nothing. "Who's there, sweetheart?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. She didn't look at me. She kept her eyes locked on the hallway. "The tall man," she said. "He doesn't have a face. He just watches." A cold, sharp chill went right down my spine. It wasn't just the words, but how she said them. So calm, matter of fact. She said when he was there, the air felt heavy and cold, and she couldn't move her arms or legs. It sounded a lot like sleep paralysis, a known medical condition where the mind wakes up before the body, often causing hallucinations and a feeling of dread. I tried to explain that to her, that sometimes our bodies are still asleep when our eyes are open. She just shook her head. "No, Daddy, I can see him. He's just sad, and he whistles." The whistle. A faint, 2-note tune. I'd heard it before late at night, and chalked it up to the wind, but Lily had heard it too. That's when I stopped explaining things away and started digging. This wasn't just about strange noises anymore. My daughter was terrified. I started a log, timestamps, descriptions, temperature readings. I was going to be methodical, find the rational source. I even set up a digital audio recorder in the main stair hall, the place that felt the most active. Before I listened to the audio, I researched the house's history. At the local archives, I found the first piece of the puzzle. The house was built by Josiah Croft, a ruthless textile industrialist. He had 2 sons, and his will sparked a bitter feud. The eldest got everything. The younger was left with practically nothing. Then I found a small article from the same year buried deep in the archives. It described a tragic accident at the Croft estate. A young male servant had an accidental fall down the main staircase and died. It was ruled a misadventure, but the wording felt too neat. A family friend from the village, an old man whose grandmother had been a maid nearby, remembered hearing stories about a scandal, something about the younger son and a servant who knew too much. That night I sat down to listen to the audio. Hours of tape hiss, the house groaning, and then, at 3:14 a.m., I heard it, clear as day. A man's voice, raspy and low,
in a single sharp whisper right next to the mic. Leave. My blood ran cold. The next night, it was like my discovery had stirred up something. As we were eating dinner, a set of interior doors down the hall slammed shut in sequence. Bang! Bang! The sound was violent. Eleanor screamed. Lily burst into tears. I grabbed my thermal camera. Paranormal investigators use them to look for cold spots, theorizing an entity draws heat from the air to manifest. Skeptics rightly point out these are almost always just drafts or insulation issues. I expected to find a draft. The ambient temperature was a steady 19 degrees Celsius. But as I panned the camera down the stairwell, I saw it. A column of dark blue, a vertical pillar of cold hanging in midair. The reading dropped to 15 degrees Celsius. A 4-degree drop in one specific invisible column. I checked for drafts. There were none. That's when I heard the whistle again. The same 2 notes. But this time, it was right behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But the feeling of being watched was suffocating. Lily was at the top of the stairs, looking just past my shoulder. "He's closer when you look away, Daddy," she whispered. That was our last night in the house. As we were frantically packing the car, the old servant bells in the fireplace started to ring faintly. We broke the lease, lost our deposit, and I didn't care. I have the audio, I have the thermal images, I have a daughter who was scared to be alone for months. Call it settling noises, call it imagination, but when you're standing in a column of cold air in your own home and you hear a dead man's whistle right behind you, you stop looking for explanations. You just run.
Sometimes the most terrifying places are the ones that were built to heal. Our second story comes from a small paranormal investigation team that got access to an abandoned asylum. The team prided themselves on their skepticism and their commitment to debunking every claim possible. This is their story, pieced together from their body cam footage and audio logs. The asylum stood like a skeleton against the sky. For the team, the mission was simple: document, don't provoke. Their first step was to establish a baseline for the environment. This is standard practice, but it's important to remember that the tools they use, EMF meters, thermal cameras, audio recorders, have never been scientifically proven to detect ghosts. They measure environmental factors. That's it. For the first hour, things were quiet. The only sounds were their own footsteps and the drip of water deep in the building. The first oddity was subtle. The audio tech found a faint 2-syllable murmur on his recording. Could be audio pareidolia, he noted, referring to the brain's tendency to find familiar patterns, like voices, in random noise. The team split into pairs. Maya, the team's recorder, and Mark, the audio tech, went to the basement equipment room. Rusted gurneys lined one wall. As they entered, Maya stopped. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. "It's like a pressure in my ears." The team lead, 2 floors up, suggested it could be infrasound from the building's structure. But then the pressure was replaced by a whisper right next to her ear, so close she felt a faint cold breath on her skin. She froze. "Mark, did you say something?" He was across the room, his back to her. "Negative," he replied. "Lead," she said to her radio, her voice shaking. "I think I just had a close-field auditory event." Then the whisper came again, louder, still intelligible. Maya stumbled backward. The team decided to try an EVP session. Electronic Voice Phenomenon, or EVP, is the act of recording sounds not audible to the human ear. It's a highly controversial technique, prone to picking up stray radio signals and misinterpretation.
Mark set his recorder on a gurney. Maya took a deep breath. "Is there anyone here with us?" she asked. She paused. "Can you tell us your name?" They waited in silence. On playback, their voices were crystal clear. But right after Maya's second question, another voice appeared, layered under the noise. It was faint and breathy, and it said one word: "Stay." They were shaken, but couldn't replicate it, a key step in ruling out random interference. Meanwhile, on the first floor, the lead investigator's body cam caught something. Pointed down a long, dark corridor toward a red exit sign, the footage shows a tall, solid shadow moving from right to left for a split second, completely blocking the light before vanishing. Neither of them had crossed that spot. The lead called it. "Team, we're done. Regroup at the exit, now." As Maya and Mark were leaving the basement, her body cam, pointing at a gurney, caught one last thing. On the edge of the gurney lay a tattered piece of a doctor's coat. The air was still, but on camera, you can see the corner of the fabric tug downward once, twice, as if an invisible hand were plucking it. "It's right here," Maya whispered. "It's right here with us." The team's final report logged the events as unexplained. For them, unexplained doesn't mean paranormal, but it does mean they couldn't debunk it. For Maya, it was more personal. For weeks after, she said the pressure in her ears would return at odd moments, always bringing with it the chilling feeling that she was not alone.
Our final story shows how terrifying isolation can be. It comes from a couple, Ben and Chloe, who rented a remote cabin for a weekend getaway. They were looking for peace and quiet. What they found was something else entirely. Their story is compiled from video diaries they recorded on their phones. The cabin was beautiful, just like the pictures. Cedar wood, stone fireplace, and nothing but miles of trees and silence. The first thing I did, mostly as a joke, was film a little tour. "Okay," I narrated, testing the doors and windows, all working perfectly. No drafts. Chloe laughed at me. The irony of that video isn't lost on me. The first night was unsettling. We were on the deck when we heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps, crunching on leaves, circling the cabin. "Probably a deer," Chloe said, but she pulled her blanket tighter. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like it was walking on 2 feet. We went inside and locked the door. Later that night, we both heard it. The soft, metallic tick, tick, tick of the front door handle turning slowly, then stopping. I got up and checked. It was still bolted. I told myself it was just metal contracting in the cold. Night 2 is when things went from unsettling to terrifying. The footsteps were back, but this time they were on the porch. Heavy thuds. And then we heard them inside. A slow, heavy tread, walking along the far wall of the main room. It was impossible. We were the only ones there. The air in the room got so cold we could see our breath, but only in one spot, right in front of the main door. I put my hand out. The air was icy. 2 feet to the left, it was normal. We started filming again, not for fun, but because we needed proof we weren't going crazy. The video shows us trying to open the front and back doors. Both were stuck, not locked, jammed, like the frames had warped shut. But there was no physical reason for them to be stuck. It felt like something was holding them closed from the other side. We huddled by the fireplace. I set my phone up on the mantelpiece to record just in case. We sat there for maybe an hour.
Watching that footage later is what really gets me. As we're staring into the fire, a coat hanging on a peg behind us, deep in the background, slowly rotates on its own, then stops. No draft. No, nothing. It just moved. Then came the banging. Not a knock. It was a series of heavy thuds at the back door, like someone trying to shoulder it open. The whole door vibrated. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice cracking. It stopped. The silence rushed back in, even more menacing. And then a new sound. A slow, single scrape, like a fingernail being dragged down the entire length of the wooden door. We didn't sleep. We sat with our backs to the wall, watching the doors until dawn. At first light, I went to the front door, expecting it to be stuck. I turned the handle. It swung open without a sound. The back door, too. We threw our stuff in the car and got out of there. On the drive home, Chloe was looking through her phone. She made a choked sound. "Ben, look." She showed me a corrupted video file, time-stamped at 3:12 a.m. She must have hit record when the banging started. The video was black, but the audio was there. Underneath the sound of the stove ticking as it cooled, you can hear something else. A slow, wet, scraping breath. Inhale, exhale. It sounded like it was recorded right next to the phone's microphone. It sounded like it was inside the room with us. The story should end there, but it doesn't. A few weeks later, back in our city apartment, I woke up in the middle of the night. The room was silent, except for a faint, rhythmic ticking. It was the same sound as the stove from the cabin, but this time it was coming from the unplugged television in the corner of our room.